So I put together this video this morning to talk about an interview that I was watching and the tariffs. And just as I was putting it together and putting the final touches on it, I got a notification, which is here on the screen, that Donald Trump has put a 9-day pause on the tariffs again. This is insane, you guys. And it backs up a lot of what I talk about in the video here. So I just wanted to point that out, that there's this new development. Also, 125% tariffs on China is, I mean, you're talking, that's like a $3,000 iPhone, maybe even more. I'm just doing that math off the top of my head. Now, I have talked about, and I've said before, that I am supportive of tariffs on China, especially on these kind of cheap consumer goods that we get from there that are made unsustainably, bad for the environment, shitty labor practices. iPhones are shitty labor practices. Products that are made using slave labor, child labor, all these kinds of things. There are a lot of things that come from China and from other places in the world that are made in ways that are awful. It's one of the benefits that I see of the tariff regime, and it's not one of the reasons why Donald Trump is doing it. But it's what we do as far as our global trade policy is awful for those the people who live in those countries, the working people who live in those countries. And so that's kind of been the worst part about watching this, has been that I support a lot of these things about ending a lot of these systems, but not in the way that they're doing it. And so it's like insult to injury for a lot of the working people in these countries to be, essentially getting like pushed out of jobs, losing the, kind of standard of living that has been objectively improved all around the world, taken along with really awful working conditions. And exploitative, extractive resource policies, but that's another video. To be losing that, and then now to be being treated like they've been taking advantage of us, we have been fleecing the rest of the world. Anyway, so 125% tariffs on China, rescinding, or I guess temporarily putting a hold on the tariffs everywhere else, the reciprocal tariffs, quote unquote. This is the most insane and not strategic, not thought out, not planned trade policy you've ever seen. If you can look at this and think that Donald Trump is adhering to some sort of master plan, you are fucking high, my friends. Wild stuff. All right, anyway, this is now onto the video of what I was talking about. I think this is all very useful and still relevant, so you should check it out. It's kind of a long video I put together, but it's really got some illuminating stuff. So, all right, happy Wednesday. So last night I watched got almost all of this hour-long interview with Scott Bessent. He's the Secretary of Treasury, and it was an interview with Tucker Carlson and him. It was, I don't know why I hate myself so much, but there were some really important takeaways from it that I think y'all should be aware of. So are these tariffs going to bring manufacturing jobs to the United States? That seems to be the overarching theme of everything from the Trump administration and the conservative media and the Republican Party about these tariffs. That's like the way that they're all pitching it to, frankly, people who are dumb enough to believe them. There's no sign that will work, especially because they're doing so much talking about negotiations, and negotiations completely undercut the ability of a firm to do that. If you're gonna enter a market or do work within a market or produce within a market, it takes time to get set up, right? And to be able to produce efficiently and reach economies of scale with a production facility in a certain market. And so if you're going to build whatever it is, refrigerators, washing machines, whatever, in the United States, in order to build that facility, it takes time. You have to import the materials. You have to sign the contracts with the company to build it. You have to get all the permitting, all these, it's so much stuff that goes into it. And it can take years. Even if, the administration were to cut through a lot of the stuff that the federal government can do, they've put their own barriers in place with these tariffs too. So just in general, difficult to just very rapidly build a manufacturing plant. But that's, like I said, there are people with, economics degrees who can explain that idea to you a lot better than I can. KED's economics, great resource for economic stuff, by the way. I'll tag her in the description. But anyway, so, in order for them to do that, they have to have certainty that these tariffs are going to be in place for longer than whatever the whims of this president are. Um, it's a long process. It's not just like let's build a factory tomorrow. Now we're just going to produce everything within the U.S. That's not the way that works. It takes time. And if you're saying that you're going to negotiate with these other countries, then it's like, okay, well, then I'll just wait out the negotiations, and once the tariffs are dropped, we'll just keep producing where we're producing it, and we'll have all the benefits and the reasons why we went to those countries, like cheap labor and low environmental standards, and et cetera, et cetera. So unlikely to very much not going to happen that manufacturing is going to increase in the United States. But let's just take that at its word and say that manufacturing does increase in the United States. Enter Scott Bessent, because in this interview with Tucker Carlson that I watched last night, one of the things he said I think is really illuminating here, and Tucker caught on to it and kind of repeated it and then whitewashed it for him. And here's the clip of what he said.
You've obviously thought this through. You think that the United States has the necessary labor force for this transition?
I think we do. I think with AI, with automation, with so many of these factories are going to be new. They're going to be smart factories. That I think we've got all the labor force we need. And what we are doing on the other side, one of the reasons, other than my support for President Trump, that I came out from behind my desk, and I had a pretty good life, and I wanted to come out and really tell people that I was worried about an impending financial calamity, given the high levels of government spending that were leading to high levels of government debt.
So that part, if, we'll just, like I said, take the administration at their word and say that manufacturing comes back to the United States. Manufacturing is a lot different than it was even 5 years ago, but definitely much different than it was before the signing of NAFTA, which is where a lot of this domestic manufacturing started offshoring, and you started seeing all the loss of these domestic manufacturing jobs in the United States. And a lot of the issues that we saw with the leaving behind of the American working class. And what you see now is that obviously AI, obviously automation, obviously robotics. But what that really translates into, people who do work in manufacturing, they need a lot more skills than was maybe necessary before. And B, you need a lot less of those people. And that's what Scott Bessent is saying here. He's saying, hey, look, we can build manufacturing in the United States. We don't have to have a whole lot of people who are available to work in manufacturing. He's essentially saying we don't need jobs. We don't need to create manufacturing jobs. We have AI and we have automation, so we can build these manufacturing plants and not really have to worry about staffing them. So this is kind of this message that you're getting from the administration about we're going to bring back all these jobs and we're going to build stuff in the United States. Those benefits, first of all, the jobs part's a lie. And second of all, those benefits of building things in the United States and closing the American trade deficit, those are not benefits for the American people. Those are benefits, once again, for the upper echelons, the people who own capital, the people who own firms that are producing things. And the people who are investing and trading. And really, it's more in the people who are investing and trading in commodities and stocks, etc. Those are people who are going to benefit. It's the investor class, more so even than the capitalist class of people who own things. Another key thing that I took away from this, and this is more of just a frustration in watching this whole interview. He talks about government debt. And this is the thing that conservatives bring up all the time. And he's talking about how it was going to be a financial calamity. Those are the terms he uses. And he brings this up in terms of like why he decided to work with the Trump administration. And he said, I saw this financial calamity coming and I really wanted to do work to reduce this the chances of it happening. And then he gives examples of other financial calamities. And he does this in the same breath that he's talking about how we have to build more. We have to really engage the private sector and set them free to just, create all this wealth by reducing regulations primarily. And giving them tax breaks and cut regulations. Those are really the two main, thrusts of this, as it always is with these people. And then he gives examples of financial calamities, and he talks about the 2008 financial crisis, the dot-com bubble in the 90s, and he even brings up 9/11, and he talks about how some people have said that the whole reason why 9/11 happened is because airplanes didn't, or airline companies did not want to invest in stronger doors, cockpit doors. And if they had just done that, which the FAA was trying to get them to do, which he even brings up, then 9/11 could have been almost entirely prevented. Here's the thing about all three of those examples. Every single one of them was a financial calamity that started in the fucking private sector, started with companies being deregulated, and and in the 9/11 example of a federal agency that didn't have enough power to regulate the entity that it was supposed to be regulating. He gives these examples that are the textbook cases of why you need strong federal regulations and a strong federal government while being a part of an administration that is slashing the federal government and slashing federal regulations. It is insane and maddening. He gives no examples of times where the federal government was the entity that led to the financial calamity, like this debt crisis that they all keep going on and on about. That's not really fucking real. It's insane. It's absolutely insane. And the fact that he mentions, the dot-com bubble, not enough regulations, the fucking financial crisis and the subprime mortgage crisis of the 2007, 2008. Again, that was cut regulations. That was had a lot to do with Bill Clinton cutting regulations. But George Bush followed up and kept cutting regulations on financial institutions that led to the crisis that we had in 2008. And then obviously the example of 9/11 that I just went through as well. These are all textbook cases of why we need government and why we need regulations and why we need empowered regulators. And it's just maddening that he uses those examples to say, this is why this administration is the work that this administration is doing is so important. And the other hilarious thing is that when he was using this example of Reagan, which I'll play right now.
I always think that you can never be 100% sure, but you can stay within sight of guardrails and keep moving forward. I can't remember. One of the Sunday morning shows I was on a couple of weeks ago, the commentator asked me, she said, "Can you guarantee me there won't be a recession?" And I said, "I can't guarantee you anything. There's nothing that tells me there should be one." So I believe that this is going to work, just like President Reagan believed that supply-side economics was going to work. And
he says Reagan didn't know about supply-side economics. Yeah, supply-side economics is probably one of the most discredited economic theories. That's trickle-down economics. That's Reaganomics. Listen, that's the idea that you cut taxes on the wealthy and somehow that money makes its way down through the economy and everyone prospers. Now, don't get me wrong, the Republicans still push this stupid idea, but it has been so widely debunked. And so for him to say, well, Reagan didn't know about supply side economics, I feel like it's him acknowledging that, no, the tariffs are probably not going to work. It's so idiotic.